The Lydian mode has a floaty, dreamlike brightness that is elevated beyond the standard major scale. This particular sound isn't used a lot in pop or rock, but will be recognisable from the huge amount of film scores and soundtracks that use it. Listen to how it sounds here with the C Lydian scale. You can hear that C Lydian is a major sounding scale with a major third note. The most important note in Lydian is the sharp fourth. This is the only note that separates the scale from major/Ionian. It provides the uplifting brightness that Lydian is known for. Here are the chords that are found in the C Lydian key, with the scale notes that go into each chord. C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, G major, A minor, and B minor. These are the diatonic chords in the C Lydian key. That is, chords that are made purely with notes from the C Lydian scale. C Lydian is a good key for guitar players because it has lots of chords that can be played as simple open chords. It is also the most common Lydian key in popular music. You can see that each of the diatonic chords has a Roman numeral above it. Lowercase indicates minor chords and uppercase major chords. This helps you to understand chord progressions, as the Roman numerals can apply to any Lydian key and simply indicate the function of the chords. Let's start building some Lydian mode chord progressions now and look at how you can write your own. The simplest and most common way to establish a Lydian sound is to have a repetitive vamp between the 1 chord and the 2 chord. The reason this simple chord progression is strongly Lydian is because it takes us from the 1 chord, which anchors the key, and then to the 2 chord, which has the sharp 4 note in it. This makes it clearly Lydian and not major/Ionian. Because it doesn't deviate from these 2 chords, there is no ambiguity in the progression. We are in Lydian. But Lydian has a big problem as a key for your songs. It is harmonically unstable. Every mode has a major scale with the same notes. For example, C Lydian and G major/Ionian. This means that they also share the same pool of 7 chords. They just have different Roman numerals because they are in a different order. This makes modal chord progressions harmonically unstable. Depending on what chords you focus your progressions on, also known as the tonal center, will draw the listener's ear to a certain key. You can use the same set of chords but change what key it feels like the song is in. There is always some subjectivity with modal music as to what key you are in, but this is particularly strong with Lydian. This is because the 5 chord in Lydian, which generally has an important role in major sounding chord progressions, is the 1 chord in its relative major scale, and the 1 chord is the same as the 4 chord, another important chord in major progressions. For example, in C Lydian, 1 to 5 uses C major and G major. In G major, this would be 4 to 1. This instability means that the use of the 5 chord in Lydian can very easily begin to sound like the tonal center and pull your progression into major. Listen to how this sounds with the following example. You can also run into a similar thing with the 3 chord. In our key of C Lydian, the 3 chord is E minor. Here are the chords in the key of E natural minor/Aeolian. You can see that once again it has the same chords as C Lydian. In this case, our tonic 1 chord C major is the 6th chord of the E minor key. And the other important Lydian chord, the 2 chord D major, is the 7 chord. If we introduce the E minor chord to our progression, then it strongly feels like this is the tonal center. The ear is instantly drawn to this. Listen to the effect in the next example. This Lydian instability can be considered in other ways as well. It's unstable because the raised 4th and the tonic, or first note of the scale, creates a tritone. Tritones are a series of 3 whole note intervals that are found in diatonic scales. Tritones create tension that wants to resolve to the next stable interval. In a typical major scale, the tritone is between the 4th and 7th scale degrees. This tritone resolves perfectly to the 1st and 5th scale degrees, the 2 most stable notes of the scale. However, because Lydian's tonic note is part of the tritone, the only resolution we get is when the 4th scale degree moves up to the 5th scale degree. This creates a partially resolute sound, creating an open, floating sense of mystery that never entirely feels resolved. This 5th note features in the 3 and 5 chords we explored, which goes some way to explain why they feel like the tonic when they are featured. You can of course use this confusion to your advantage. If you like the ambiguous nature of this, then use it in your song and don't worry about it. Here's an example with both of these chords, and also a first inversion 2 chord. Where do you think the tonal center is here? The 7 chord has the sharp 4 note in it, making it another strong Lydian chord. It also has 2 notes in common with the 2 chord. In the next example, I'll use it with the 1 and 2 to begin with. This could be considered a strictly Lydian section. Then I'll introduce the 3 chord. Listen to how this interrupts the tonal center and draws our ear elsewhere. We've seen the problems with the Lydian mode, but what can we do with our chord progressions to overcome this? The easiest thing to do is to avoid the 3 and 5 chords. This will avoid the use of the 5th note in the scale, apart from in the tonic 1 chord. But assuming you want to use a wider range of chords, what else can you do? You can use the tonic note as a pedal note that is played as the lowest note in every chord. This will utilise inverted chords and other slash chords. This will constantly drive the ear back to the tonic of Lydian and not allow it to stray so easily elsewhere. If you're playing in a band situation, you could get the bass player to constantly come back to the tonic note over all chords in order to create a similar effect. Listen to this in the next example. The first 8 bars have a standard approach. On repeat, the bass is playing a constant C note. How do you think this affects the tonal center of the piece? Another thing you can try is by adding the sharp 4 note to your chords. This will create a range of chord types in your progressions. Let's explore this in our key of C Lydian. The sharp 4 note is F sharp. We know that F sharp diminished has the note in it, and so does D major and B minor. But what about the other chords? Add F sharp to the 1 chord and you get an add sharp 11 chord. The 3 chord can be played as a sus2 or an add 9 chord to introduce the sharp 4. The 5 chord can be played as a major 7th and the 6 as a minor 6th. I'll repeat the next example twice, once with standard triads and then the second with the F sharp note added to the chords. Listen to the difference. How do you feel it affects the tonal center? Most songs that actually use Lydian will only use it for part of the song. You can now understand the reason for this, but how would this work in practice? The simplest and most obvious move is between Lydian and the major scale that begins on the 5th note of your chosen Lydian scale. This is because you use the same scale notes and same chords, and therefore the change will be seamless. You just need to make sure you have distinct Lydian feeling sections. For example, another simple approach is to use the parallel major and Lydian keys that have the same tonic note. As we saw, the only difference is the sharp 4th note and subsequently 3 chords. You could use the main Lydian chord progression, 1 to 2, to generate a Lydian feel and then move back to the standard major progressions. This change is nice when you go from the major 2 to minor 2. The The single note change between these chords is the third to flat third, F sharp to F in C Lydian. This is the most important note of the chords, so can clearly be heard here. Listen to it in this example. You could also look at this from the other end and just have a major key song that brings in the major 2 chord as a borrowed chord. This can be called modal mixture or modal interchange. This is extremely common in Lydian songs for the reasons I have outlined in this video. This just scratches the surface of what you can do with Lydian, but hopefully will inspire you to experiment with this interesting mode. I'll now put some of what we've discussed into a full song example. There are a few things to note before we begin. The song utilises first and second inversions. These are used to change the bass notes in the chords and create movement and interest. First inversions have a 6 next to the Roman numeral, second inversions have a 6 and a 4. It starts with an intro/bridge section that is repeated through the song. This is deliberately ambiguous, using chords that feature in both C major and C Lydian. As such, the listener will feel like it is a C major progression until the major 2 chord at the end of the intro. Also listen for the pace of chord changes. The first chord lasts a beat and a half, whilst the second is heard for 2.5 beats. This provides a nice rhythmic feel that repeats through the song. This intro will link into the verse to begin with, and later the chorus. The verse starts with a minor 2 chord from the C major key. As explored earlier, this provides a nice transition from the major 2 chord in the intro. The verse then avoids the 1 chord C major entirely. This plays with expectations again, drawing the ear to the 5 chord G major as the new tonal centre. This shows you how you can experiment with and mix modes in your songs. All that matters is how it sounds to you. I also used the diminished 4 chord for the first time here. It is played as a -7 flat 5 or half diminished chord, providing a subtler sound than the full diminished. This provides a strong pull to the G major chord, further suggesting its new role as the tonic. This whole thing is repeated twice. The only thing that changes is the final beat of each 4-bar sequence. First up, it uses G dominant 7th. This is again borrowed from the C major key and would typically draw us back to the 1 tonic chord. It is used to surprise the listener here. On the second repeat, we use the G major 7th chord. This has the sharp 4 Lydian note in it to hint at the Lydian feel to come in the chorus. Before we get to the chorus, the intro and verse are played again. The chorus is one long extended section. It is designed to be much more Lydian focused, revealing an uplifting brightness that separates us from the verses and intro. Listen for the change this brings. It uses the 1 chord with an added sharp 11th or sharp 4th note. Pairing this with the standard 2 chord is designed to evoke Lydian brightness. Other chords that feature also use the F sharp note in them to highlight this sound. Some are played as inversions. Again, this is to put the F sharp note in the bass to further highlight them. The chorus has an unusual 14-bar length. This is designed to sound like it interrupts the song, breaking an established 4-bar repetition of sections. It leads into a reprise of the intro chords as an outro before ending on the C add sharp 11 chord. Is this in G major? Is it in C Lydian or C major? Does it even matter? Have a go at experimenting with Lydian in your own songs and see how you get on. You've learned about chord progressions, but there's a wide world of the Lydian mode out there. I've made a playlist just for you right here, so make sure you watch that next and improve your Lydian knowledge today.